I'm Sam Brock in for Joe today.
And we're so happy you're here, Sam. Good to have you. I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started this morning, of course, with this breaking news coming out of the Middle East this morning. We now have Iran's supreme leader saying Iran cannot be forced into surrender. This is in response to President Trump's call for Iran's, quote, unconditional surrender in its conflict with Israel. Multiple administration officials say he is considering a range of options for U.S. involvement, meeting with his national security team for over an hour in the Situation Room yesterday.
So, Savannah, President Trump also threatening Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, writing that we know exactly where he is hiding. Trump's words adding, we are not going to take him out, at least for now. This coming as Israeli missiles continuing to find military targets in Tehran. The IDF says it's destroyed fighter jets, missile launchers, and sites related to Iran's nuclear program. In response, Iran has launched new missile barrages against Israel overnight as the two sides now enter a sixth day of conflict. We have senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, Alex Vitanka, standing by with analysis on the volatile situation, along with White House correspondent Monica Alba with the very latest on the Trump administration's movements here. But we begin in Israel, where international correspondent Matt Bradley has been obviously following all the developments on the ground. Matt, good morning. You know, we saw more of a volley of missiles overnight. Let's start where you are in Israel. Iran's new army chief saying yesterday that the strikes conducted on Israel so far have been a deterrent warning, vowing that, quote, punitive action will be carried out soon. But has Iran so far been able to land any significant blows here?
No, not really. Not in the last couple of days. They have been before, and that's what we're seeing. It's been at least 36 hours, and I got to nail down that statistic for you, since we've seen an actual fatality here in Israel. It's almost been that long, or about that long, since we've seen a real injury coming from any of these Iranian missile attacks. Now, remember, in the opening days, we saw the death toll rise and then rise and then rise again with each subsequent night of Iranian reprisal attacks against the Israelis. Here in Tel Aviv and throughout the country, civilians being killed. That is not happening anymore and hasn't been happening for much of the past 2 days. And this is because, according to the Israelis, it sounds as though they have managed to maintain, and we keep hearing this from the Israelis every time we speak to them, they now enjoy complete air superiority over Tehran in the western part of Iran. That means that they are able to do things like what you just described, and we heard this from the IDF spokesperson just today, that they were able to do another series of strikes on Tehran, an extensive operation that involved more than 50 fighter jets, and it lasted for 3 hours with 3 waves of strikes. And so when we're talking about this, it's easy to just say it, but you have to imagine here, this is something that in many ways the IDF, the Israeli military, wasn't anticipating, that they would be able to take and hold air superiority over Iranian airspace for this long. They're essentially putting their jets over Tehran, over Iran, and leaving them there unmolested for hours at a time. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing such a lopsided fight, at least over the past 48 hours.
Matt, in Iran, we are seeing footage of just this traffic gridlock as thousands of people flee Tehran. We're also hearing from an on-the-ground source that a cybersecurity breach is affecting the city. Tell us more about what this is like just for civilians on the ground in Iran.
Yeah, I mean, the Iranians announced this, too, that they had launched this cyber attack. They're no longer able to get cash out of cash machines. So the situation has now become a multi-pronged attack. We saw basically the Israelis were first striking anti-air, then striking nuclear targets, then striking economic targets like gas fields and oil fields. Now this cyber attack is just yet another blow on top of many against the Iranian regime. You know, it's unclear exactly, given the decisive nature of this battle on the Israeli side, what the plan is for day 2, whether or not there's any effort to try to move this from a military operation to a political one. And this is something that we've been seeing when you go all around Israel, all of the conflicts and theaters in which it's engaged. We're seeing unequivocal military superiority by the Israelis. Huge loss of civilian lives in many cases, and no real plan for the day after.
Air dominance, as you described it, Matt, as we were just looking at those images of all the people trying to escape Tehran right now, with just the level of uncertainty in the region. I mean, it's incredible just to see the extent of chaos on the roads. Israeli missiles are continuing to damage and destroy key targets in Tehran. You were outlining that. Israel's military says that they've killed several top military commanders, 10 nuclear scientists. What other targets have they hit in the last 24 hours?
Well, as you mentioned, just that cyber attack. And now we're talking about actually the IDF just announced that they were striking helicopters, attack helicopters that they've disabled on their platforms while they were on the ground. They've been hitting anti-air defenses. And this has been from the beginning. So it hasn't just been nuclear targets. One of the reasons why they were able to achieve air superiority is because they essentially totally disabled Iran's anti-air capabilities in the very early hours. So that's not news. That happened on Friday morning. It's been continuing to happen. And the other thing that they've been doing, and we've been hearing this from the IDF, is something they're calling missile hunting, which it means that they're just going around, again, exploiting their superiority over the ground and hunting missiles using what they've said is real-time intelligence. And that's another buzzword we keep hearing from the Israelis. Real-time intelligence, as opposed to intelligence they gathered in the years and decades ahead of this huge operation. Now, because they're able to have what they are saying are eyes in the sky, they're able to reinform themselves and adjust basically in real time.
Matt Bradley, thank you very much for reporting from the ground in Israel for us. Let's now bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Monica, good morning. So we mentioned this a moment ago. The president met yesterday for quite some time with his national security team in the White House Situation Room. Talk us through this variety of options the administration is considering when it comes to this conflict to Iran. And how great is the fear that the Iranian military could strike U.S. assets in the Middle East?
Well, that's certainly a top concern, Savannah and Sam, and that is why the president is reviewing this wide range of options, because given different scenarios, there may be different ways that the U.S. would be involved here. We know that military bases in the region with U.S. personnel are on high alert, and if somehow there was an attack on one of those bases, if any U.S. personnel were injured or killed, that is a scenario where we could see a larger response and the president more likely directing some military action. Now, if that doesn't happen, it's still possible that the president could order some military action and could aid Israel in trying to bomb out these nuclear facilities that you guys were just discussing with the help of U.S. weaponry, because those giant bombs, those bunker buster bombs, as they are called, are something that really we believe only the U.S. has the capability of giving. That's a major decision the president needs to make, too. And then there's the option of doing nothing militarily and just continuing to help Israel in its defensive posture in trying to help intercept some of those missiles, some of those drones that are still coming from Iran, which the U.S. has said it will do and will continue to support in that manner. But this is really a situation where it could change by the hour, and I'm told the president is still considering all these options. Everything still remains on the table, at least for now.
Monica, can you help folks maybe understand some of the pendulum swing here? Because we know that previously President Trump had said the U.S. was not going to intervene directly in this conflict. He was pushing for a broader nuclear agreement. Then he posted on social media yesterday saying, quote, the U.S. has complete and total control of the skies over Iran and demanding complete and total surrender from Iran. We know this morning the Ayatollah coming out and saying we will never unconditionally surrender. What kind of response has this created within our military and diplomatic circles after this sort of intense push for a nuclear deal?
Yeah, that was some very striking language, and you pointed it out, Sam. It's the use of our patience is wearing thin. We have total control over the skies of Iran. This idea that the U.S. is already potentially more involved than was previously thought in the last couple of days in the beginning of this conflict. And remember that candidate Trump campaigned on ending all foreign conflicts, not pushing the U.S. into more foreign entanglements, saying he wanted to be a peacemaker. So the response to that was certainly some raised eyebrows. And also this question of regime change. We're told that's something that the administration was not seriously considering, that they weren't going to join a potential Israeli plot to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran. So that would be a really, really significant shift. It seems more like that was some bluster, some heated rhetoric from the president, who does like to do a lot of his foreign policy by social media. So there was a pretty strong response to that, given that is how the president often likes to speak. Remember, he left the G7 summit where he was huddled with other world leaders, and other world leaders expressed some concern at those kinds of remarks, guys.
Monica, we also understand that President Trump has spoken on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just within the last day, the last 24 hours. Was anything definitive agreed to about what role the United States will have in this conflict, especially given the comments that Sam just mentioned we've seen on social media from the president sounding like there is potential for more involvement?
Right. It doesn't sound like something was definitively outlined yesterday. Again, I think the two leaders discussed this range of options. It sounds like Israel has been pretty clear in that they would like the United States assistance here. They would like help in continuing to eradicate Iran's nuclear capabilities and take out those major facilities that remain. But this is a situation where we know the president and the prime minister have been in touch almost every day in the last week or so. And we know that there have been moments of tension between the two leaders. And that is certainly something that they have navigated, something that the past administration was clearly navigating as well. But it's really important to point out here that even at home here within his own party, within his own allies, there is a divide in MAGA world about how to proceed here, again, because the president promised to not push the U.S. into these so-called forever wars in the Middle East. But there are others really defending him. So also domestically for this president, it's just as politically risky as it has been domestically for Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. Guys.
All right, Monica Alba with a full breakdown there from Washington. Thank you. And yes, clearly the specter of the U.S. getting involved is very much at the fore here. For more on this, let's bring in Alex Vatanka. He is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute specializing in Iran. Alex, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Obviously, so many layers to this conversation. Those comments, though, let's start from Iran's supreme leader saying that Iran will, quote, never surrender, per the president's question. And that, quote, any American military entry will undoubtedly be met with irreparable damage. Those are his words. This coming as President Trump's threats against him are raising questions of a regime change. Monica was just talking about that. What kinds of conversations do you think are happening inside the Iranian government right now?
Well, good morning. Look, if you look at the totality of the Iranian regime, you really have two main parts to this. You got the men in uniform, if you will, the ones who are firing those missiles at Israel today. That's centered around the Revolutionary Guards, known as the IRGC. And then you got the state machinery, the foreign ministry, the presidential palace. They're the so-called more pragmatic voices. Well, the pragmatic voices right now don't have much to bring to this fight right now. They're obviously the technocrats in suits. They don't have much to say. So it's the hardliners who are in charge. And they are saying, and I would include the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei there as probably the top hard line in Iran, that they're going to fight this out, that they are not ready to give in yet. But I suspect if there was a moment for diplomacy to work, if you will, that those pragmatic voices that are sitting on the sidelines in Iran will have to have a say in the conversation, and they have to. That will be their responsibility to speak to Ali Khamenei and say, sir, you're the reason why we're in this mess. And this is not a moment for you to be proud. This is a moment for you to make the right decisions and concessions to prevent this war from getting out of control.
This concept of a regime change, I mean, it's something that President Trump has been critical of for years. He's attacked lawmakers on both sides of the aisle for the support of any type of foreign intervention. But it seems just lately what we're hearing, what we're seeing on social media, maybe he's changing his tune a bit. But I mean, this is a country of 90 million people. What risks would be created by a full collapse of the Iranian state? And how would that potentially impact U.S. involvement in the conflict or on the ground in Iran?
We really don't know. I mean, we've never been here before. As you said, this is a country of 90 million people, the size of Alaska, or 3 times the size of the country of France, 15 immediate neighbors, many different ethnic groups, many American soldiers based around Iran, plenty billions of dollars American commercial interests from energy to otherwise in the Gulf states and elsewhere. So we don't know. What we do know is last time Iran was occupied, if you will, was between 1941 and 1945. And it took the Soviet Union and the British to occupy that place during the Second World War. It's a large country. It's a major undertaking. Collapse of Iran could have impact across the board, and it will not necessarily be a nice thing. I'm not saying that's the only scenario, but my concern is I don't see a functioning opposition on the sidelines waiting to take over in Tehran as a central government. That's my concern. So anarchy could really be one of the scenarios we can expect if Khamenei is killed and the regime collapses.
Yeah, Alex, I'm so happy you brought that up, because one of the questions here would be, is there a strong opposition voice, right? If there is popular support for an uprising, for an overthrow of the current government, you do need sort of a galvanizing figure. Does that exist? And by the way, it was only 3 years ago that we saw these widespread protests over the abuses of the Iranian regime. Specifically, you'll remember after a woman was beaten by improperly wearing her hijab and later died from that. So there was some hope at the point that could lead to change. What is the current right now on the ground, and who can actually lead to an overthrow if that's the objective of the people?
Exactly the right question to ask. Look, the Iranian people, I think for a long time, given up on the Islamic Republic. Ali Khamenei is responsible in the eyes of average Iranians for this state of affairs. Now, you can question whether Israel was justified in attacking Iran or not, and I lean on the side that says Israel shouldn't have done this. There was a way to deal with Iran's nuclear program other than attacking them. But let's not put that aside. This is a regime that doesn't have its people behind it. But will these same people, once bombs starts dropping on cities of Iran, will they be in a position to actually stand up to the regime? And that's the big question mark. People will put their own survival first, as your footage just showed. They get in their cars and get out of the city. They're not running down trying to organize a political a campaign against the regime. So that's really important. There are figures. I mean, the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, is probably the most prominent figure. He's been in media in the last few days saying a bright future lies ahead for Iran. But again, does he have enough support right now to pull it off? That's a question mark.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns. Clearly, Alex Vatanka with the Middle East Institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Important context there. Well, this morning we're learning new details from the investigation into that attack on Democratic politicians in Minnesota. Police are revealing more about what happened that fatal night at the home of Melissa and Mark Hortman. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the latest.
Hey there, we're here outside the Minneapolis area jail where accused gunman Vance Belcher is being held. This as authorities revealed new chaotic details tied to the shootout that they say sparked the largest manhunt in Minnesota's history. And the family of one of the lawmakers he's accused of murdering speaks out.
A solemn procession carrying the bodies of State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark as Minnesota authorities work to determine the motive of the suspect they say stalked and killed them at their home early Saturday as part of a targeted attack on lawmakers.
He's nothing short of a monster.
Brooklyn Park Police Chief Mark Bruley sharing new details about the shootout at the Hortmans' home, describing this frantic call from a sergeant.
She said, "Hey, Chief, here's the deal. Senator Hoffman, who lived in Champlin, had been shot. His wife had been shot. We came over to Melissa Hortman's house, and Mark, her husband, is dead. We can't find Melissa. We think she might be kidnapped, and the officers got involved in a shooting with the suspect."
It wasn't until officers went deeper into the home that they found her dead. The family dog, Gilbert, wounded. He was later euthanized.
It was from here, the Hortmans' home, that authorities say Belcher took off on foot, sparking that historic two-day manhunt.
According to court documents, during that manhunt, authorities found guns, cash, and passports in Belcher's wife's car.
Can you tell me whether or not she's been cleared in that investigation?
I would say nobody's been cleared in this investigation.
Lawmakers around the country on edge. Congress holding an emergency briefing about safety. Minnesota Rep. Zach Stevenson knew Melissa Hortman for decades, remembering this advice she once shared.
You can be strong and kind at the same time. And that really was what Melissa Hortman was all about.
The Hortmans' grown children saying the best way to honor their parents is to do something, whether big or small, to make our community just a little better.
And back to the investigation and that point from the police chief about Vance Belcher's wife. Up until now, authorities have really only largely said that she was never detained during that traffic stop and she's fully cooperated with the investigation. I asked the police chief just point blank, what can you tell us about Jenny Belcher's role in this investigation and whether or not authorities are looking at her for possibly helping her husband? And he just very bluntly said they're leaving no stone unturned in this investigation, and then added, and if anyone helped him, quote, they will be held accountable. And that was as far as he was willing to go. Back to you.
All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move to some economic news this morning. All eyes right now on the Federal Reserve, which is expected to keep interest rates steady again when policymakers deliver their latest decision this afternoon.
Yeah, the central bank meeting comes amid this ongoing economic uncertainty. This is related to President Trump's trade tariff back and forth and also these growing geopolitical turmoil in the Middle East that we've been talking about all morning.
And the impact on the oil market, potentially. Investopedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver, joining us now with more. Caleb, thanks so much for being here. So the expectation is the Fed is not going to make any movement right now. I guess reading the tea leaves, what are they looking at?
Yeah, happy Fed Day to all who celebrate, but don't expect
First,
any...
we have to ask him first, Sam. You might not know this. The meeting is in
6 hours and 41 minutes is when we'll get the decision, and then there'll be a press conference. No, it's ticking away. It's ticking away, but we're not going to get an interest rate cut today. Most likely 99.9% chance. No change in interest rates, 100% chance the president will hate that decision, non-decision. But the Fed is looking at the economic data right now, and if you look at inflation, came in last week at 2.4%, unemployment at 4.2%. Job done as far as the Fed's concerned. That's just where they want the economy to be right now. But the uncertainty around tariffs and now oil prices, that could throw things into chaos.
Sam just mentioned oil prices. We're going to get a little nerdy, a little in-depth about this right now, because there is this concern with the Iran-Israel conflict and the potential that the U.S. gets involved, that this incredibly necessary oil source could essentially be shut down. We're going to pull up a map here. This is called the Strait of Hormuz. We have about 20% of the world's oil flowing through here, right here, that you could see. Essentially, this could be shut down. What would it mean for the world economy and financial markets if that were to happen?
Yeah, that is a major supply chain disruption. There's one little island right there in the Strait of Hormuz where a lot of that oil leaves Iran and goes down the strait to places like China, which is one of the biggest importers from Iran. So you got China in the middle of this conflict as well. You're probably going to see a squeeze on prices. We saw a 7 or 8% rise last week, calm down a little bit the last couple of days. But if oil prices keep rising, that eventually bleeds into gasoline prices. And oil obviously is used for petroleum products, for plastic products. So you might see higher prices if this intensifies. It depends on how bad it gets and how long it lasts. But this is a super sensitive area. And it's not just the U.S. Again, China is the biggest importer. And then you have Europe, who also imports a lot of oil from Iran.
I know for many folks, interest rates right now are still at a higher level than they probably would like to tolerate, from mortgages to rising cost of goods and services. What does this mean, the Fed not taking any action right now for our wallets?
Yeah, get used to it, because you're going to see these rates probably stick around this until the end of the year. Right now, if you look at Fed fund futures, this is where traders think interest rates are going to be. We see 2 little baby cuts maybe by the end of the year. But today is important because we get the summary of economic projections from the Fed and the dot plot, the most boring yet most important chart in finance that tells you where Fed officials want interest rates to be 6, 12 months out.
Maybe boring is good.
Boring is good.
All right,
no kidding.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. All right, well, deadly weather continues to hit parts of the country. Today's no exception. Powerful storms are on the horizon from Texas to Michigan, with the possibility of damaging winds, hail, heavy rain, even tornadoes. And in West Virginia, NBC News correspondent George Solis spoke with a family grieving the loss of their son in powerful flash flooding.
Torrential rain pounding Kansas as severe weather threatens millions. The deluge in Pennsylvania stranding this group of 100 Girl Scouts. First responders helping the troop across a flooded roadway north of Pittsburgh. Nearly 20 tornado reports from Nebraska to Minnesota. This massive funnel cloud seen ripping across the Cornhusker State, menacing farms and homes for nearly an hour. The Army National Guard on the scene in West Virginia, the state reeling after major flooding took the lives of 7 people, including 26-year-old Kylie Shotton and her 3-year-old daughter Parker.
I know I heard someone yell, help, and I think it was him. And all I could do is watch helplessly. I couldn't do anything.
In Triadelphia, Brian Creighton says his 19-year-old son Travis was with his mother Donna. The water quickly rising, ripping their home from its foundation. They were both swept away, Donna surviving.
Travis' last words to Donna was, swim, Mommy, swim.
I'm trying, baby, I'm trying. And then I just kept going underwater.
Brian says his son died a hero.
His last selfless act. I really want my baby boy back.
All right, George Solis with that report. Heartbreak, obviously, as we try to deal with all of this inclement weather. We have more details now on the severe storm risk, which is still sticking around, with your Morning News Now weather.
We sure do. Michelle Grossman's here in studio with us with the details. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. And yeah, we're looking at severe weather today and also on Thursday, so the multi-day event does continue. And we're looking at storms this morning. We've been watching them all night long, producing heavy, heavy rainfall, lots of lightning, too. Clear to see where this cold front is. It's stretching from Texas all the way to portions of the Great Lakes. And that will be the theme throughout the day. So we're to watch some rocky weather, especially this afternoon into the evening hours once that daytime heating gets going. So there's that potent cold front. It's a long one. We're looking at severe storms all along this front. Downpours, too, with a lot of them. That's indicated by these brighter colors on Futurecast. This will all move off to the east tomorrow. So we're still talking about severe weather on Thursday, now targeting the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, and then we'll see scattered showers, too, and storms throughout the Southeast. So another busy day tomorrow. This is what it looks like for today. 54 million people at risk. We could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, 65 miles per hour, damaging hail. A few tornadoes are possible. Also, that heavy rain will be falling as well on top of some saturated grounds. So notice the coloring here corresponding to the legend. We have an enhanced risk that's 3 out of 5 on the severity scale. So we're talking about places like Lafayette, also Evansville. But notice the big cities stretching from Texas all the way to the Great Lakes. So we're talking about Chicago. We're talking about Dallas, places like St. Louis. And we could see some strong storms there also. That number grows to 62 million tomorrow because we're talking about the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, down to the Carolinas, where you see the yellow. That is the likeliest spot for seeing some strong storms from Burlington to Albany, New York City, D.C., Norfolk, Charlotte. Now, keep in mind, if you are traveling tomorrow on the I-95 corridor, you're flying out of all the major airports in the Northeast, you want to call ahead tomorrow because we will have some severe storms going through the area. As far as that's the biggest story today, but we're also looking at dangerous heat continuing in the Southwest. Temperatures soaring over 100 degrees, 110 in some spots. And the Southwest isn't the only place heating up. We are going to be heating up in the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas. We do have a heat alert in portions of Philadelphia, the surrounding areas there. And then 15 million in the Southwest, where we're looking at dangerous heat warnings, heat advisories, because we will see triple digits there. But guys, we may see our first heat wave in the Northeast beginning next week.
I mean, this has been like a total 180. Every week delivers seemingly a different vibe on the weather front.
It's gloomy today. Like I want to take a nap, and then it's going to be summer.
Okay, well, we're waiting for that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Appreciate you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.